Welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a quick one. I'm getting ready to tackle the rear bumper. Alright guys, so if you watched my other video, probably the most recent one that I put on the channel, you saw that I did the front end of this car with all kinds of stuff, bumper and grill, and that was a whole thing. Really in the back, all we need to do is just replace this guy. So taking the factory bumper off, and we're going to put a steel bumper on. I'm going to walk you through how that works. This one is super simple, so like I said, this one's going to be quick. Okay, so here's the rear bumper that I decided to settle on. This one happens to be from Britpart. It's pretty readily available. I like that it was pretty simple and straightforward. You know, kind of mimics the factory bumper's lines with kind of a similar corner, you know, detail, but it's definitely sleeker. Doesn't stick out as far, which I like. This is kind of a lot for my taste. And yeah, it's steel. It's got the off-road look. It's gonna give me some potential attachment points, but put some hooks and things like that. So pretty straightforward. So I went ahead and started this project, but essentially these lights, okay, on either side, you're going to take these out with a 10mm socket. There's just tiny little nuts on the back. I'll show you guys what those look like right there. So yeah, very small, just little nut right on the back that you just take off. And so once you get that undone, then these slide out super easy. These are actually going to drop into the new bumper, which is nice. These are lit, so you do have to, you know, disconnect the bulbs and plugs back here, as you can see. But this is really what you want. So that gives you access to these two bolts. I believe these are going to be 17mm. There's two more on the other side. So that's it, 4 bolts. This thing just slides right off, and this thing slides right on. So we're going to go and get to it. All right, so we run into a little bit of a challenge. Sometimes this happens on these projects, but this bumper is made for a D1. I triple checked this, but I tried to basically dry fit this and just slip it over to see everything lined up, and it did not install. So the issue I've figured out is, okay, so these brackets here are for your tail lights that were in the old bumper. This is the connection point for the new bolts to bolt this into the frame. So there's one on either side. As you can see, there's all kinds of stuff all over these. I'll show you why. So essentially what's happening is when I try to slide this over, these little parts here are interfering. And so obviously with those gone, this hole right here is able to line up perfectly with this hole for the bolt to go through, with a nut on the back to hold this to the frame. So no big deal. Sometimes this requires a little bit of fabrication. So we've got the cutting wheel out. We're going to basically just trim these off. These are really just supports that kind of interfaced with the way the old bumper was set up, because it didn't have like that internal bracket, so it kind of rested on here and then bolted into the side. So these are really unnecessary for the new bumper we're putting on, because we're going to use these points. So let's go ahead and get them off. Okay, now that we have those cut off, we are in good shape. So just did a quick test fit of the bumper here and slid that over, and it sits perfectly. The bracket sits right here. The angle's perfect. Put a bolt through there with a nut, bolt through there with a nut. This did come with another piece, which is over here in the center if you want to do center mounted recovery points. That said, this hitch is all welded together, so normally you would sneak that piece right in between here, but you can see this is all welded. Not sure if this is the previous owner or just this type of hitch or whatever, but honestly, I probably don't need a ton of recovery points. You know, just a couple is probably fine. And so we're gonna go ahead and slide this on and get it installed. Okay, so before we install this, I'm actually gonna do a little project I didn't expect to necessarily do right now, but sometimes when you're doing these things, you've got things off, like in this case the rear bumper. It makes sense just to go ahead and knock out some of the other stuff you kind of have on your list. So I'm actually going to refinish this trailer hitch frame situation in the back. As you can see, it's in decent shape. It doesn't look bad by any means, but now would be a perfect time to touch all this up, especially this piece right here, this section right here. You know, those are the things that really show from the back of the car. Once the bumper's on, it's going to cover obviously all this stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. This is a product that I've been wanting to try. It is Rust-Oleum's undercoating, so it's designed specifically to resist rust. It is in the rubberized black finish, so something nice and simple. I am thinking about doing this on the wheel wells of the D1. They are a little bit dirty and just sort of a little rusted, not like through the metal, but just surface rust. So thinking about cleaning those up and spraying them, since we'll be taking this thing off-road a good bit. So we're gonna hit this with a little bit of brake cleaner, a wire brush, wipe it off, just make sure we get anything loose and easy to get off, get a good clean surface, and then we'll spray this on before we put the bumper on. All right, so this is one coat. You're gonna do two, but I have to say I am really impressed. This stuff looks great. It goes on very, very well. Pretty even. It coats very well. So there are parts that I cleaned with the brake cleaner that it coated very nicely, but there's also frankly some parts where I decided to go ahead and hit it like way in the back there on the sides, just because, and it coated just fine over what was existing. So pretty impressed with this stuff. Gonna let it dry, give it one more coat after that. But yeah, if you're looking for a way to really clean up your frame and some of the bits that are exposed on the car, wheel wells, this may be the ticket. So just a quick look at the final product here. Pretty stoked about how this turned out. This is a really nice bumper. It wasn't crazy expensive. You certainly can go with beefier options like RTE, some other brands out there. Certainly thought about doing that, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna be doing pretty light trail stuff with this. I'm not expecting to do crazy like rock crawling or anything like that. Haven't done a lot of overlanding, to be honest, and so I'm gonna kind of ease into it, but nonetheless can always swap it out down the road. But I really like this one. I like the looks, the aesthetics, you know, the way this is kind of super clean. I did end up putting these bolts in. I'm not going to be using this feature. It's not actually bolted into the frame itself, but I did want to put these in just to kind of give it a finished look. So I refinished those. Some of the SEM trim black. As I mentioned, refinished all this. So yeah, pretty pleased with how this turned out and how it ended up looking. So another project down, and hopefully you guys enjoyed following along for this one. Pretty straightforward, pretty quick, with the exception of that slight frame modification. So if you're enjoying the D1 build series and you don't already subscribe, please hit the subscribe button. I would really appreciate that. Also have 2 Range Rover Classics in the works. I've got Porsche 911 stuff. I actually have a couple of Porsche related things coming to the channel pretty soon. So follow along. If you already do, thank you for watching, and catch you on the next one.